So welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Jenny Allen. I'm on the product marketing team here at ServiceTrade, and we're so excited to have you for our webinar, which is 3 common mistakes that fire protection contractors make that increase risk and decrease revenue. We have a very esteemed panel with us today, a lot of expertise amongst these 3 folks, and I wanted to just take a minute and let you all introduce yourself. Terry, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, Jenny. Thank you. My name is Terry Victor. I'm the Director of Risk Control Services at Risk Suppression Partners. I've been in the industry, the fire sprinkler industry, for over 50 years. I have been in the contracting side of the business, working with Grinnell, Automatic Sprinkler Corporation, Simplex Grinnell, and then most recently with Johnson Controls. And then about a year and a half ago, I went and started working for Risk Suppression Partners as their director. And I bring a lot of experience from the sprinkler side of the business. I've been involved with the NFPA codes and standards for over 37 years. And I was on the original technical committee that helped develop NFPA 25. So I've been involved quite a few years in this industry.
Fantastic. Josh, how about you?
Yeah, well, it's hard to follow up Terry, but my name is Joshua Gilbert. I'm with Desert Fire in Palm Springs, California. We've been around since 1971. My grandfather started this business as purely a fire extinguisher company. And then through the years, we evolved and took on fire sprinklers, kitchen suppression systems, and alarms. And so, yeah, it's been with my family for 3 generations. And through all of those processes, we learned a lot about all of these systems and how they work, especially being in California. We learned the hard way and the difficult way of everything that is expected of us. And now here to talk a little bit more about the mistakes we've made and ways to improve in the future.
Awesome. Thanks. And Amanda?
Yeah, I'm Amanda Sutter. I'm Vice President of Product Management here at ServiceTrade for the fire side of the market specifically. So all our suite of products that support fire life safety, all of those are managed by my team and I. And then we love to engage with our customers and experts like Josh and Terry and all of you on the call to help hear about the challenges you're experiencing and help drive our roadmap and where we want to invest.
Fantastic. Thanks. So yes, thanks to our panelists for being here. Thanks to you for being here. You know, our goal is to give you all kind of actionable insights that you can take back and put into practice in your businesses. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to jump right into our mistake number 1. So if you think about mistakes and documentation, which all of our mistakes that we're going to discuss today revolve around documentation, contracts are really the first place that we start, right? What are those agreements that you have with your customers? And one key clause that every fire protection company needs to have in their terms and conditions is a waiver of subrogation. So Terry, I'm going to throw it to you. Can you talk to us about what a waiver of subrogation is and why it's important for fire protection contractors to have it in their contract?
Sure, Jenny. And I just want to make it clear that we're risk suppression carries liability insurance for a lot of fire protection companies. That's our specialty. And as such, we make recommendations to our clients on what types of terms and conditions they should have in their contracts. And one of those key terms and conditions is the subrogation clause, which indicates that when there's a loss, then usually involving property damage, I think 90% of the claims that we see involve property damage. It's rather water damage, obviously, is the biggest one. If there's a fire, of course, there's property damage involved in fire. And what typically happens is the building owner, they submit it to their insurance company. Their insurance company initially provides the funding for the claim, pays for the damages and so forth. And then they come after the contractor or multiple contractors that may have been involved with that particular property. So if you are the inspecting contractor, or even if you are the installation contractor, then the contractor or the insurance company that covered the claim initially would come after you for some of their money. They're saying, well, you were at fault because of you were inspecting this building or you installed the system. And so we want to get money back from you. And they subrogate. So they turn around and they sue the contractor and the contractor's insurance company for as much money as they can possibly get. So the waiver of subrogation just typically says, we're not an insurance company as far as the contractor goes to insure the property. Property already has insurance. And if you have a loss, your insurance company is to cover that loss and not come after the contractor. And that's the basis of this waiver of subrogation. You can't come back after us to recoup whatever payments were made for that loss.
That makes sense. So other than the waiver of subrogation, are there any other kind of contracts best practices or other kind of important clauses that folks should include?
There's also a limit of liability that we typically recommend. We have a whole suite of terms and conditions that we recommend to our customers. The waiver of subrogation is a key one. The limit of liability is the same thing. If for some reason contractor forgets to inspect or misses a device during their inspection, that device is involved in a claim, and they come after you and say, well, you're liable because you didn't include this particular device in your inspection. Well, the limit of liability clause would say, okay, we agree if we're liable, we'll pay something, but we're only going to pay up to the value of our inspection contract that we have. So again, we're not an insurance company, we're just providing a service. And if we're responsible for something that wasn't done as part of that service, you can't come after us for the entire loss. We're only going to give you what is the value of the contract. So that's a limit of liability. That's also a very good clause to use. It's sort of like belts and suspenders. You have both liability clause and this waiver of subrogation as part of your terms and conditions.
Got it. Yeah. And I know you've offered, Terry, to share a sample waiver of subrogation clause with attendees. So we'll talk to you guys more about how you can get your hands on that here in just a few minutes. So thank you for that, Terry. So Amanda, I know with respect to ServiceTrade, how does our platform help kind of enforce and support contracts best practices like the one Terry was talking about?
Yeah. Well, I'll say that alignment between your contract terms and your operations is something that we take really seriously. And with ServiceTrade, it's not about, just writing good agreements. It's really about embedding them into how the work gets done. So you heard Terry talk about how important the clauses are, and the management of those contracts is also really important. So with ServiceTrade, you have, all of your customer specific agreements right at your fingertips, and then it's easy to customize them and create customer specific terms. And then having those contracts and clauses in place and organized and stored is kind of like your insurance policy against that, that dreaded, that's not what we agreed to conversation, because you've got everything right in the system. It's very clear and it's ready when you need it. And then, I'd say it's also worth noting that it's not just about avoiding risk, because having those really clear contracts and the well-defined scopes really helps build customer trust. And when you've got those right protections in place and you're delivering exactly what you committed to, it's a lot easier to win and keep great customers. And that's what we want for our customers.
Great. Yeah. Excellent points. All excellent points. So we are going to go ahead and jump into our second mistake. So the first one is kind of talking about before the inspection process, before the work is done in your contracts. And this second mistake revolves around a documentation error or mistake during the inspection process. And that's actually when a company uses the past inspection report and places it in the technician or inspector's hands as a starting point for that current inspection. I know we had a story right here a few years ago in our own backyard in North Carolina that show that the consequences of this practice can be pretty costly. Amanda, do you want to talk about that case?
Sure. Yeah. So as Jenny said, right, kind of in the ServiceTrade backyard in Durham, North Carolina, there was a fire at a public elementary school. Fortunately, that was in the middle of the night, so not when students were in class. But over the course of the investigation that followed, the fire inspector ended up being criminally charged with failure to perform duties because he admitted to falsifying inspection forms by copying the 2020 information into the next year's report, the 2021 report.
Yeah, and I know, we want to make technicians and inspectors' lives easier and make it more efficient, but we don't want to kind of get into this area where it's easy to take shortcuts. So I know we at ServiceTrade have talked to a lot of fire protection contractors about this very issue since day one, and kind of use those conversations to develop our product towards this approach, making the tech's job and inspector's job easier, but without opening up the risks of this rubber stamp approach. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Amanda?
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly right. Our goal is to give technicians everything that they need to do their job efficiently. And our forms are designed with that in mind. But then our goal is to balance that efficiency with the need for that real-time assessment. So when an inspection form is dispatched to a customer, we're saving technicians valuable time because we're pre-populating things like the customer, location, and the asset information. But it stops short of giving them shortcuts that could put the business at risk. So as Ginny said, like since day one, that's been our philosophy. It's important to us that the way our product works also helps you properly protect your customers' assets. So we handle and pre-populate a lot of the tedious stuff so your techs can really focus on what matters, and which is, doing that proper in the moment inspection.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, we pre-populate the inspection forms with the asset information and that kind of thing. And so that the technicians don't have to fill it out. But if they do find something that needs to be updated, they can update it right there during that inspection. And then once they submit that form, the customer record or the asset record is automatically going to be updated in ServiceTrade. So this, it kind of goes both ways. Josh, I know you are a longtime inspection manager and ServiceTrade customer. How has our approach kind of helped you with inspections?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, back on your point, people using last year's inspection forms and reusing them is something we see far too often, and it was something we were coming across a lot. And when I finally engaged with ServiceTrade and you guys had this ability, I jumped right on it because I saw it as a real necessity in order to, as you're saying, make the technicians' jobs easier. Because especially me being the third generation in this business, a lot of our technicians here have been here for longer than I've been alive. So me asking them to change up their system from paper forms to digital, I might as well have been asking them for their firstborn child. A lot of them were really reluctant at first to do this. And then you get through the first year of doing it, of entering all the asset information in, which really isn't so bad because you would have to do it on the report anyways if you're doing it properly. But then once all of it's in, then as you were mentioning, it's in there, your business information, the contractor information, all of the assets, depending on what you're doing, if it's fire risers or extinguishers or kitchen suppression systems, it's all in there. And then all you have to do is set it up in a way to where you're updating the information. So was anything changed out? Was there any deficiencies? Were any hydrostatic tests done? And now all of those same people, it's like the best thing that's ever happened to them, because now they're no longer chasing down the paper. We're able to track what's going on. And now with Compliance Engine, with Brycer taking over the country, it's made it so much easier because we know exactly what we need to do. Especially for us California people, where we have the AES Title 19 reports, it has to be very specific. And a lot of our technicians weren't doing everything, or they would miss one thing, or, they'd do one part or another, or we'd find papers under their seat in their truck. But this allows us to track it. And so we can say, okay, great. Hey, there's 4 that were never submitted. We can go talk to that person. So overall, it's been huge. And when that Compliance Engine integration with ServiceTrade, now it's as simple as just sending it over with a click of a button. So in the end, they were very reluctant at first, but very happy now.
I made a note to ask you when we want to do a change management webinar. I'm going to call you again, because if you've had to implement with techs who've been around longer than you've been alive. You probably know a thing or two about that. So, yeah.
I
And
definitely had to have proof of concept, but now, now they trust the process.
yeah, that's great. That's really great. Well, let's move on to mistake number 3, which is really more of a theme than one simple mistake, and that's concerning improper or insufficient documentation of deficiencies and communication of those deficiencies to your customers. I know when an incident occurs that could result in a potential claim, it's so important to be able to access the documentation, organize it, and then, get it in, organize it in a way that really tells a story about what happened. And speaking of stories, I know, Josh, you have quite an interesting story to kick off this discussion. You want to tell us about what happened to you and your company?
Yeah, of course. And it was funny when telling this story initially, talking to you guys, I could see Terry's blood boil a little bit when he saw how we handled it. But it's a great learning opportunity, and I'm happy to share the story. So, about 5 years ago, we were doing a sprinkler head change out on a new renovation that was happening at a very large hotel down here, 400 plus room hotel. So we were doing a new section that they added on. And so it was time to do the sprinkler head change out. And we pulled our first head on the job, and instantly it's a live head. And the maintenance people on site had told us that the control valve that we had turned off was the correct control valve. Come to find that it wasn't. And it took 10 minutes of this very high pressure sprinkler head going off on the 7th floor of a hotel, until we found out that the real control valve was in the ceiling. And when they were doing the renovations, they had taken off the control valve sign, and it was just a white thing. So we had no idea what this thing was. It just took us running around to every single door and opening that there was till we could find something. But after 10 minutes of water flow happening, all of that water had gone down all 7 floors of that hotel and cost about $400,000 worth of damage. Obviously, went through insurance in that situation, got dropped from our insurance, and then the next people that took us at double the rate.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So Terry, I think this is a really good time to talk about a response process and best practices when, something like either, something like what Josh experienced occurred, or even when it's just like maybe something smaller that could lead to a claim, right? Like what are best practices for fire contractors who, after an incident like this?
Well, obviously, Josh's scenario there was heavy water damage from the get-go. So that there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You need to have an incident report team that will, immediately come to the job site and ascertain, what happened and try to do as much damage control as possible, as quickly as possible. An incident report that is filled out properly to identify the people that were on site. Under Josh's scenario, he was actually told, his people were actually told what valve to shut down. We have a form that we recommend that you actually get someone to sign off on the fact when you're going to go in and do T&I work, or you're going to be pulling a sprinkler for whatever reason, or opening a system, let's say for internal pipe inspection, and they direct you to what valve is supposed to be shut. Have them sign off on its form saying, we've directed Mr. So-and-so has directed us to shut this valve to perform this work. It's just a form you can carry in your truck or keep it on your laptop or whatever you're using to do your inspection reporting. ServiceTrade could embed it, in your software. But again, it's just documenting, what happened, get people, interview people. We had an incident many years ago where a sprinkler was discharging in a rug storage facility, and a forklift operator had taken a roll of carpet and tried to put it in the rack and actually knocked a sprinkler off. And then, of course, he hightails it, and no one knows why the sprinkler went off. Well, there happened to be a maintenance guy that was there when it occurred, and we interviewed the people that were there. And this guy says, "Oh yeah, well the forklift operator, he did it. He's the one that pushed that roll of carpet into the rack and broke the sprinkler." So interviewing people is very, very important. Obviously, immediate remediation is important. You can have shop vacs in your trucks and you can come in and start mopping up water, but you really need to get a remediation contractor involved ASAP. However, as a sprinkler contractor, do not commit to pay for that service. Again, it's the owner's property that's being damaged. The owner needs to take control of the remediation. You can recommend a company to hire. You can even call that company and have them come, but don't sign any agreements where you're going to pay that remediation company as a sprinkler contractor. That's up to the owner. That's their responsibility. That goes on their insurance. And again, and taking as many pictures as possible. Once they found the valve that was above the ceiling, take pictures and show where that valve was and the fact that it was not identified properly. NFPA 25 as well as NFPA 13 requires all valves to be properly identified. And that doesn't mean just say control valve. It means it has to indicate the area of the building or the system that it controls. So if that control valve that they closed wasn't labeled properly, that's a great defense. You have two great defenses. And it's like I wish we could have, been able to defend Josh on that one, because again, they were shown exactly what valve to shut, which was the wrong valve, and the valve didn't have the correct signage on it, obviously. So those are two key points on following up when there is an incident. And there is no really small incident. You could have a minor water spill, and we had one of these recently. Water went down through the floor a little bit and happened to go on a unit that was providing additional power to the building, UPS unit. It shorted out the UPS unit and resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cost, just for a simple overflow of a drip cup. So there is no small incident, in the grand scheme of things. Immediate response and reporting is imperative.
A follow-up question, Terry, you mentioned a few times how it's important to interview people when an incident like this occurs. Is it okay for you to interview people yourself? Is there like a threshold where maybe it's better to have like a third party interview people who are at the scene? Does it matter? Or is it just kind of getting that information? Is it better to document it, videotape people? Can you talk to us a little bit about, interview best practices?
If they're willing to let you interview, to videotape, we all have cell phones these days that will videotape. If they're willing to be on camera and videotape, then that's ideal. But no, I think whoever's there reporting from the contracting company, don't wait for any kind of an expert to show up or anything like that. Interview the people that were there ASAP. Take good notes. If you can record their interview, that's great. And get their name and a contact information, cell phone number. You need to be able to get back to that person when the time comes when everybody's going to say, okay, well, what really happened here? Mm-hmm. So yeah, interview right off the bat. Now you may have to have in a big loss like what Josh experienced, we would also call in an expert. Now they're not available for that day when the incident occurs, but within a short period of time, we would like to have an expert go to site and see all the things that Josh can point out to us as far as what valves he was told to close and all that sort of information. But immediate response and getting those interviews right away, that's important.
And is it important to, if you do need to get an expert, is it important to have an expert that your insurance company recommends, or like where do you find that expert?
Yeah, that's the step I left out of the process. Immediately contact your insurance company as a sprinkler contractor. The second call that you make after you call your home office and let them know there's an incident, then they need to call the insurance company and let the insurance company know. And then the insurance company, risk suppression, would make the decision: do we need to send an expert out to see what the real conditions were, and we will hire that expert. So we handle those things from our end as the insurer.
And if I'm playing devil's advocate here, Terry, and I say, well, it's just a really small thing, maybe it's just a really small incident, and maybe I don't need to call my insurance company. You're like, why is that a bad idea?
You'd be surprised how quickly the damages rack up. And just like the incident with the UPS, making the UPS system go down, the contractor thought no big deal. The fill cup overflowed, got a little bit of water on the floor. What he didn't realize was there were penetrations in that floor that went down to the next level and ruined that UPS unit. So you can't tell immediately where, how much damage is being caused in certain situations. So you're better off reporting it ASAP, let your insurance company handle it. If you've got right terms and conditions, it could be handled right away and without any further part of tying up anyone from the company. I mean, every loss, the only people that make money on losses like this are the lawyers and the experts. So the insurance company loses, the contractor loses, everybody along the line loses in these situations. But you can lessen losses by reacting quickly and getting the right people involved from the get-go.
Great. So Josh, I think, well, and just as a reminder, we do have the checklist for a response plan that we're going to be sharing. We're going to be sharing with attendees along with the recording of this webinar after. But Josh, based on that incident, like what are some of the changes that you made in kind of your response or the way that your SOPs, what'd you learn from that you put into practice in your business?
Yeah, definitely. Well, this is where we start to have a little bit of fun with ServiceTrade, and we've gotten really granular on how we add things. So some of the things that we've done, even on just our inspections or inspection repairs, is we have a list of items in when it's using through ServiceTrade when they go through the checklist, like make sure that the riser is turned back on at the end of the job and take a photo to show that, because believe it or not, it happens a lot of time when you're doing an inspection job on 40 risers, sometimes one gets missed. So this ensures that things like that don't happen. I actually also learned a lot from talking to Terry initially about, maybe we need to do pre-inspection checklists as well. So we try to think of any possible scenario of an issue that we've had in the past. And even if it takes one extra step on their inspections or what they're doing, it's worth it to us, because that documentation is gold, because these are time-stamped photos that we have. And usually at the end, when we're doing our work acknowledgement, we have them sign it off, and that's really helped us a lot.
Nice. So Amanda, Josh's story has a lot of learnings in it, in terms of how insufficient or improper documentation can increase risk, and negatively impact revenue. Can you talk to us a little bit about how ServiceTrade is designed to help contractors like the ones who are joining us today generate more revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've designed the system so that really the moment a technician spots a problem, they can document it. They can take photos, notes, even quick voice memos, and then those things instantly become part of the record. So we're trying to make it easy for office staff to create really clear professional quotes, even using like voice to text summaries with AI to help speed things up, so that the office team doesn't have to spend, hours decoding notes or chasing down any missing information. And then your customers get really clear reports that help them understand exactly what needs fixing and why. And then because everything is so well documented, including those third-party compliance reports, you're more likely to get quick approvals on repairs. So the result is really, better customer communication, faster quote approvals, and ultimately more revenue. And because that's all tied into, detailed, as Josh mentioned, time-stamped documentation, you're protected in case anything ever comes up into question later. And we are seeing with all of that, we're seeing customers approve repairs faster because they trust what they're seeing. There's no more back and forth and like lengthy emails or explanations that are needed. It's just really clear communication that turns those identified problems into completed repairs. So that means better compliance for your customers and, healthier revenue for you.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I love one of our account managers was telling me about customers that he works with and the fact that now with like our smart AI features, a technician, they leave one job, they can go to the next job, they can talk into their phone and talk about exactly what they did on the job, what happened. That voice note goes back to the office. We use AI to transcribe that, to clean it up, to summarize it, to put it on the quote, to put it on the job summary, and it makes a really nice professional presentation for customers and saves not only the technician time and helps with kind of thorough documentation, but also helps your back office when they're kind of like doing the work to just get, take what the tech has done and getting it over and communicate it to the customer. Josh, I know that before you were on ServiceTrade, you guys were using paper. And I would love to hear a little bit about kind of the before and after, about your processes for documenting, tracking, and quoting deficiencies and how that's changed, now that you're on ServiceTrade.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a huge change because obviously paper is paper. Paper can get lost, paper can get misplaced. And we were finding all these instances of, maybe someone left the company and we'd be cleaning out their truck and we'd find a stack of invoices in their back seat that they never turned in. And it was really hard to track, especially with an accountability system like ServiceTrade. So one thing that's really great since we took on the inspection manager is that one, we can track what's being done. And then two, it's doing three things simultaneously. It's creating the report. And if you have certain compliance like AES, it maps everything onto a report so we don't have to do it. The second is that it's creating all the deficiencies within ServiceTrade so that way we're able to track, quote, and then get more business because of it. And then third, it's sending the work acknowledgement to the customer as well, all by filling out one form. So that's helped us a lot with admin within the office as well as the technicians in the field. And what you guys were saying, the voice to text has been really great because a lot of people just, it's typing on the thing or writing it out. It's really nice. I talk to text on my phone all the time. I'm huge on that. But yeah, and then after that, once we have all these deficiencies within ServiceTrade, we're easily able to track what's being quoted, what's being followed up on. Are these people responding? Are they approving them? Do we need to keep on reaching out? Because if you don't get to it quick, they're either going to forget about it, go find someone else or whatever. So you want to be on it as quickly as possible. So we're able to track how long it's taking, how long does it take on average to go from writing up the deficiency to the quote, or from the quote to the job, or from the job to the invoice. And once we started implementing that, our revenue started skyrocketing because we were just finding that by not staying very on top of it, just things were getting missed. And by the time it was to go to the inspection the next year, we're like, oh my God, we never followed up on this quote, or someone else took it. So for us, that's been really helpful.
That's great. Yeah, I love, being able to your transformation from paper to ServiceTrade and being able to not only track deficiencies, but also, measure the things and then correct behavior or just behavior of kind of your company, I think is really important. Terry, I wanted to talk to you because I think a lot of times, we can get quotes quickly out the door. And that's one of the things that we really help people do, our customers do at ServiceTrade, is turn around those quotes quickly. But when there could be a potential claim, sometimes I know, our customers get quotes out for deficiencies to their customers and their customers maybe just don't take action, right? But I would imagine having documentation and being able to pull that up as part of the story that you tell when there is an incident that could result in a claim. I think being able to show that is pretty important, right? That the fire contractor did their kind of like duty in terms of saying, look, we reported this, we told you about this, and then it was your position to not act on it.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jenny. And to what Josh was saying, it's extremely important to get those deficiency quotes out ASAP. I mean, back in the day, when we were doing the paper forms, the fitter or the inspector would write up the deficiency. They might write up exactly what valve was involved or what component was involved with enough of a description for someone else to quote it. But a lot of times somebody had to go back out in the field and follow up and see what the exact size of the valve was or whatever the case may be. Now we can take pictures of the valve, of the deficiency itself, take a picture of it. And so now we have the information that says this is the make and model and the size of the valve. But getting that quote out right away is so important. The customer, if you delay by a week or two and getting that quote out, the customer thinks, well, it's not important. The deficiency so it's not a big deal because my contractor didn't make it like it was a big deal. So we need to get that quote out immediately. And then we need to follow up to make sure that, a week from now, hey, I sent you the quote. We haven't seen, that you've accepted it. We need acknowledgement on this quote and keep that system of follow-up going. If you let it slide as a contractor and there's an incident, they're going to come back to you and say, well, again, you didn't make it like it was any big deal. So we didn't emphasize it. We didn't put it in our budget. A lot of people will use an excuse. We aren't budgeted to have this repair done. Well, we can't help that. We're telling you and we're advising you on a continuous basis that you need to have this fixed. And that's very important if there's a loss. The other step to that is if they accept the deficiency repair, make sure that you advise them when you intend to come out and do the repair. We had an incident where the contractor quoted the repair, didn't communicate with the customer. 2 weeks later, there's a loss that involved the repair that wasn't made yet. And they came back on the contractor and said, well, you were supposed to come out and do it and you didn't do it yet. So communicate. Once that deficiency has been accepted, make sure the customer is aware of what your time frame is. We have to get materials together. We have to schedule our labor. We will be out there in 2 weeks or whatever the case may be. Make sure you communicate that to your customer. And those are the important things when it comes to repairing deficiencies and identifying deficiencies.
Great. Well, I think we're nearing the end. I do have one question that I wanted to ask. I think, Terry, you might be the best person to answer this one. Sometimes when an inspector is going through and doing an inspection, NFPA 25 or 72 or whatever they're doing, they may see something that is unrelated to the inspection that they're actually conducting. Can you talk about best practices in that scenario?
Sure. And I can address NFPA 25 specifically, but I think 72 is along the same lines. The expectation is that the system that you're inspecting or testing has been installed properly in accordance with NFPA 13 or 14, 20, whatever the installation document is. NFPA 25 specifically says that it's not up to the inspector to determine the adequacy or accuracy of the of the installation or the design of that system. So the inspector is just supposed to come in and make sure things work and things appear to be in good shape. That's their sole responsibility. However, some inspectors have specific knowledge to know that if they see a quick opening valve instead of an OSMY valve on a system, well, that's not in accordance with the codes and standards. So they may want to make the owner aware of that. And so we have an observation report. It's not part of NFPA 25 inspecting report. And we highly recommend that you separate those two. Do not put observations on your inspection report, but have a separate document that says we have observed something like a quick opening valve, like sprinklers that are not spaced properly. We've observed this and we want to make you aware of it. And you need to have it, maybe evaluation performed, or you may have to have someone come in and correct that as an issue. You need to make sure that you indicate that this was not an exhaustive evaluation. In other words, we didn't go through your whole system and look for these things. We just happened to notice that you had this problem, and we know it's not in accordance with the installation standards. and make them aware of it. So you have a duty to do that if you have that specific knowledge per the fire code. So make them aware, but don't make it part of your inspection report per se. Have a separate document for that.
Great. Great. Well, I appreciate all the information that you guys have shared, but now I'm gonna ask that you give me one key takeaway. What is like one thing that people who have joined us today can put into action? We can change it up a little bit. Josh, do you want to give us your key takeaway first? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, for us, it's be over prepared and proactive. There's so many things that are changing, like with compliance engine taking over, and there's all these new laws that are always happening. So I want to make sure that we're covered for any change that might happen. The one example that I didn't give that happens to us a lot, is where an alarm company will come to a job that we do the fire sprinklers for, and then they leave the riser off, but then they blame us. So now with all of that documentation, we say, nope, here's documentation of when we left and that we left it on and things like that. So anything you can think of, we do it with tags or whatever. Whatever you can do to protect yourself, there's never too much. Just do it.
Got it. Terry, how about you? What do you want to leave participants with?
I mean, documentation is the key. And it starts with the initial agreement, making sure your scope of work is very clear, that you describe exactly what you're going to do and where you're going to do it, what devices are involved, getting the customer to advise you of where certain components are, and documenting that. Where are all the control valves? Where are all the low point drains for the dry systems? Where is there an antifreeze loop? That, it's not up to the contractor to find these things. It's up to the owner to tell the contractor where they are and for the contractor to document those things. And then when you're doing your inspection, having a good inspection report, making sure it's very thorough. One of the things, I was stressing before with the signage, NFPA 25 requires that signage indicate, what area the system is being controlled by that control valve. Well, many inspectors aren't picking that up on their inspection form, and they should be picking that up, as well as the presence of an information sign or a general information sign. And there's probably people listening to this saying, what are you talking about? Well, there's certain signage. If you go through NFPA 25, it's required to be there, and you need to be inspecting for it, because if there's a loss and it's not there, then then you're responsible for that fact. So again, inspection report is part of documentation, deficiency quoting, following up, and then just making sure that you have all that documentation organized and ready in case something happens. And documentation to me is key.
Great, thanks. Amanda, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I would say if you're looking for high impact, take a look at your deficiency process. Are you capturing those consistently? Are you communicating them clearly? Are you quoting them quickly? That's really a sweet spot where technology can make a big difference in your compliance and your revenue. And then on the ServiceTrade side, I'd be remiss not to mention, if you are already a ServiceTrade customer and you want to dive deeper into anything that we talked about today, and how ServiceTrade can help you in these instances with your business, please reach out to your account manager. And if you're not yet a customer and you want to learn more about how ServiceTrade can support your business, you can head to our webpage, servicetrade.com, and there's just a button to request a demo, and you can schedule a personalized walkthrough with our team. And we'd love to talk to you.